Elise Myers has taken all of her content down. Let's talk about it. Changed your bio to say taking a break. I'll see you when I see you. It's not just a juicy scandal. I think it's actually an incredibly important moment. As far as I can tell, she was bullied off the app by people who were upset with her for not speaking out enough about Palestine while she's going through a health crisis with her newly born child who has a medical condition. I have a lot of feelings about this, but I don't want to center myself, so I want to look at this sticky tab that says strategy and this other sticky tab that says strategy. I'm scared to say this, but the way that liberals are doing politics right now is bad strategy. In 1967, Dr. King made the difficult decision to speak out against the Vietnam War in his speech Beyond Vietnam. I've covered this speech multiple times already, but I'm bringing it up now because when he did that, the way that people reacted split the civil rights movement in two. On one side was the group of people who thought that he was betraying the movement by not prioritizing local black rights, and on the other side were people who thought he was betraying the movement because he wasn't prioritizing global rights enough, fighting against US imperialism. King's friends, as I explained in the other video, witnessed that this caused a major depression in Dr. King to the point where he thought that he maybe should just retire to Riverside Church and become a pastor there where he had given that original speech. Maybe you think that it's kind of ridiculous to compare Dr. King to Elise Myers, and maybe that's kind of the point. Don't get it twisted. I understand that social media has political power, but we are not exercising that power if we are just using it to police each other. To put a word to it, it is liberal perfectionism. I cannot agree with you unless I agree with every single thing that you do. That is not just unrealistic, it is unstrategic. Policing someone requires time and energy out of both parties. In liberal purity culture, we are not listening to each other, we are evaluating each other. And evaluating each other takes precious intellectual energy. That strategy sticky tab is in Bryan Stevenson's book, Just Mercy, where he explains how he and his team were able to change juvenile life without parole sentencing at the Supreme Court level. File court cases in Missouri, Michigan, Iowa, Mississippi, and so many others. And they had a theory of the constitutional argument that they were going to employ. Producing that theory and filing those cases required intellectual effort. My incredibly rhetorical question is, when Bryan Stevenson was heroically using his skills to get federal laws changed that would protect children, was he betraying the movement because he was not also simultaneously working for women's reproductive health or healthcare access? Obviously, laughably and ridiculously, no. No individual human can simultaneously work on world-scale problems effectively, and yet we expect this of our social media creators, not because we see them as humans, but because we see them as externalized projections of ourselves. Before I let myself get too angry, let me explain what I mean by how liberal perfectionism is anti-pluralism. Pluralism, if you remember, is one of the ideas in the Federalist Papers that James Madison helps us define. It is the idea that there are going to be differences in opinions about what is the most important thing to prioritize. If you were related to Philando Castile or Eric Garner or Tamir Rice, it would be reasonable for you to focus on police violence as one of your highest priorities. So too with gun violence or gender-based violence. King in his speech calls for protest, but he says that how you protest is a matter of your own conscience. Liberal purity culture, like any purity culture, doesn't care about your conscience. It cares about compliance. In our pursuit of being perceived as perfect, we are evaluating each other and ourselves instead of evaluating solutions. Speaking of solutions, conclusion. Lots of different people are doing lots of different good work. Where Stevenson has legal expertise and intellectual energy and a team of legal researchers, Elyse has skills in emotional intelligence and relatability and encouragement and vulnerability. Pluralism requires us to recognize that neither set of skills is superior or more important than the other. It is reasonable for different people, for different reasons, to prioritize different things. Many people are prioritizing Palestine, and they have legitimate moral reasons to do so. But I think many people are making demands of other people's skills instead of using their own. And while we idealist liberals are tone policing each other and calling each other out, conservatives are strategizing, getting anti-queer bills passed into law, anti-IVF bills passed into law, judges appointed to positions of power. Call-out culture is a fossil fuel. It is useful for getting things started, but it is unsustainable in the long term. Let us make the intellectual and moral energy transition. I, of course, want to end on some kind of punchy one-liner about how at the edge of democracy's end, we can't afford a schism in the movement like we saw in the 60s, or some sort of like punchy, metaphorical, tough image that's real intellectually flexy about how when democracy is bleeding out on the table is not the time to check if the gauze is carbon neutral, which I do think is a good line, but I think it's best to just say that call-out culture has served its purpose, and we have to kill it before it's too late. We have to stop making demands of other people's skills and start focusing on ours and how we can use them.